Hello and welcome to TheAIbumMan, and at long last I'm going to be reviewing the 10th studio album from the Liverpudlian atmospheric prog band Anathema, and this is without a doubt my most anticipated album of 2014. Why? Well, because in 2012, when they gave the world Weather Systems, I reviewed that album actually last year in 2013, and I gave that album a perfect 10 out of 10. It is currently my 9th favourite album of all time. And why? Because it was the single most beautiful and emotive piece of music I've ever heard. It just resonated with me in a way no other album has. And of course it was my favourite album of 2012. That almost goes without saying. So of course, I've been very excited to see what would come next. How could they try and top the perfect Weather Systems? Well, I honestly don't believe they can top Weather Systems for me. The connection I have with Weather Systems, I don't think I could have with another Anathema album. I'm just not sure I quite would, but I always hope I will. And I can't say this album is as good as Weather Systems, but that's because Weather Systems is one of my favourite albums of all time. It's like saying this album isn't as good as Dark Side of the Moon. Did you really expect it to be as good as Dark Side of the Moon? I don't think you did. But this album, this is still one of the most thrilling releases of 2014 as Anathema start to tread new water and start to go in a slightly different direction to what we've seen since they returned with We're Here Because We're Here in 2011. So yes, they expand the musical horizons and create another superbly strong studio album. So last time on Weather Systems, we had them start with the Untouchable Part 1 and 2 songs. Here, instead, on Distant Satellites, we get the Lost Song Part 1, 2 and 3, so Lost Song Trilogy. And one of the interesting things about the trilogy is they're not actually all in a row, they're broken up a little bit, as we'll get to shortly. So if we look at the first part, Lost Song Part 1. Now, this has some strings that lead the intro before adding layers of drums and pianos and guitars. All the while we hear the stunning voice of Vincent Cavanagh lead the song, or however you say the surname, I've never been quite sure. And then at times it sort of intertwines with Lee Douglas's, but she's certainly more present on the second Lost Song than she is on the first. This first Lost Song is more about showcasing Vincent's voice. And interestingly, I've heard that the origin of this trilogy stemmed from Danny Cavanagh, the main songwriter of the band. He was trying to remember this riff he had and he couldn't, but ended up coming up with this, so that's why it's called the Lost Song. And this song may not be all that different from what we found on Weather Systems, as the crescendo soars and Vincent's voice transcends the music and just conveys so much emotion. I still find this a very satisfying start to the album. It's the type of song that really only Anathema can do, and just yet again they pull it off so perfectly. Now the Lost Song Part 2, this sort of echoes Untouchable Part 2, as this is the softer part. And this highlights in particular the incredible vocal talents of Lee Douglas. This song, it's more of a ballad, I would say, with the piano-dominated intro, but when that gentle percussion kicks in and then Lee begins to sing, it really is truly something to behold. Her voice is just indescribably beautiful, and I honestly cannot think of another living female vocalist that really can hold a candle to the intensely emotive voice as she hits every note perfectly, never sings more than she needs to, never sustains or wobbles her voice for the sheer sake of it, just sings what she needs to and creates just such an atmosphere. It truly is amazing. She really dominates the song as Danny's music builds behind her slowly and steadily before the long sustained guitar notes come in drips and drabs over the soundscape. This really is a song that will just make your heart melt as it takes you to just a completely different plane. Though my favourite song on the album has to be Dusk, Dark is Descending. We seem to see Anathema take a bit of a darker turn here, as usually Anathema's music is characteristically quite optimistic and positive about general life, or certainly the last few albums. Thematically though, this seems almost to harken back to the older albums when they were a heavier, more sort of doom metal type band, and you know, thematically this could almost be on Alternative 4. Though musically, this is still very much modern Anathema. You're not going to find any doom metal here. And this song seemingly, I don't know, it definitely has that darker tone to it, so I was saying maybe more of a focus on minor chords to create that dark atmosphere. And of course, a crucial part of this is how, so before we had the first song being a Vincent driven vocal song, the second being a Lee driven vocal song, and here we really see them come together just so perfectly to create this massively melodic yet slightly ominous song. And in particular, what I love is just a masterful use of dynamics, as you think this song will continue to build to a crescendo, but instead it just stops. And only Vincent and the piano come back, though again it soon starts to build with the layers of acoustic guitar, bass and drums as they come in, taking you further and further into the song and along on the journey. I just find it such a truly breathtaking song. It's just something to truly behold. Ariel first reminded me of Lightning from Weather Systems a bit, with the piano melody and Lee's voice being the only parts that are present at the beginning of the song. And this seems at first to be sort of a simple ballad, as for the first few minutes we keep this rather simple arrangement, though soon the orchestral tide starts to sweep over the song like waves on the ocean, getting more and more powerful and stronger as Vincent's voice comes in and the distorted guitar chords start to be played. Yet what I love particularly about this song is the way that the piano melody just remains constant throughout the song, never changing, giving this song a bit of a sort of a post-rock vibe as it gets more and more climactic, and everything just builds around this main piano melody. It's very well done indeed. And yes, okay, the chorus of staring at the sun, love so strong it hurts, may be a little cheesy lyric. I know many people have pointed out how cheesy that lyric is, and yes, it is. But when you've got a musical backdrop so lush and the timbre of the song just so perfect, I just don't give a damn what they're saying. It still connects with me in a way that no other band truly can. So continuing in the last part of the Lost Song trilogy, and this was the first song I heard from the albums, this was the single, though I do believe the track Anathema, which we'll come to next, would have made more sense to have been the single, but there you go. This track, a bit like Dusk, Dark Descending, this has more of a melancholic vibe to it, I would say, through its more ambient sounding opening that just moves so elegantly and flows so stunningly as the voices shift from Vince to Lee, and the guitar plays the same, again, just repetitive part. The drums and bass lock together to form this tight but quick sort of interplay. And Anathema, I do find they're very good at taking fairly repetitive music, but yet making it interesting just by adding so many different layers on top of a rather repetitive sort of either guitar or piano part, and still making it sound so interesting as they shift emphasis between layers and do this and that. And this song definitely works excellently in the context of the album, though I don't think it's quite as strong as the two preceding tracks, and the crescendo of the song maybe is not quite as intense or climactic as the songs that have come before, particularly when it's being followed by Ariel. But it still works even with its rather sort of sudden ending. The song Anathema, though, this certainly makes a statement, and to me this song really delivers on the promise that the name gives by delivering just an anthem and a monster of a song that I'm sure will remain irregular in live sets for a long while to come. The beginning of the song is none too unexpected, with an orchestral overlay upon a well-played piano melody, but what really sets this song apart and what really makes it shine is Vincent's voice. In my opinion, this is one of, if not his best, vocal performance. The emotion conveyed in this song as his voice soars and holds just the most wonderful notes towards the end of the song. And then the highlight of the song has to be the guitar solo from Danny. We don't get that many guitar solos from Danny, certainly not in the last few albums, but this is simply awe-inspiring. It takes up a good maybe quarter of the song, and yes, okay, it's maybe not the most technically difficult solo ever, but it's just this sound that he creates. It's just so intense. It's few notes, but they're just played so beautifully as they rise above the music. It really is a one of a kind, a very unique and very interesting guitar solo. Now, You're Not Alone, this really harkens, I would say, the beginning to the second part of the album. And that's going to be one of my slight criticisms of the album, is there does feel like there's two distinct parts to the album, but let's get to why this part sets itself from the first 6 tracks. So You're Not Alone, as I said, this really does, harken our intrigue to the weirder, more experimental part of the album, where the electronics happen. Yes, we see some electronic music influence Anathema here, and this song is quite different from anything really they've written before, with the refrain of You're Not Alone chanting quickly above the ever-speeding backing with, again, you have this piano staying quite constant, not that fast, but then this percussion and programmed drums that start to get faster and faster before you get this dissonant sounding heavy guitar riff come in and just create one of the heaviest songs we've heard from the band in a long time, as well as one of the most electronic. I still think there's something quite fantastic about it. It's very weird and yet wonderful. The heaviness is a breath of fresh air. The electronic influence is something that catches you back a bit. And again, this song does build up to a crescendo structurally. It's not too dissimilar to Anathema songs, but yeah, it still seems in stark contrast to anything preceding it, and really is a very difficult song to describe. Though after we get Firelight, which I was really looking forward to this because I heard there was going to be an instrumental track on the album. I thought, oh yeah, Anathema instrumental, that's going to be cool. But this was definitely the weakest and most disappointing track on the album. As I said, I was exciting for it, but here we just get sort of a slow church organ playing. It's a very ambient piece, and it doesn't go anywhere or do anything. I mean, I understand it's meant to bridge the gap and be more of an interlude before we get to the title track. I still feel it's rather pointless and superfluous, though. I don't think it really adds anything to the album or to the track that comes after. But Distant Satellites, this is a brave song. This is certainly different, without a doubt. This begins in a fairly jarring way, very reminiscent of the program beats almost in Kid A by Radiohead, and this whole song and part of the album has a bit of a Kid A amnesiac electronic Radiohead vibe to it. It almost seems to take the melody is dead, rhythm is everything Tom York philosophy, with its very sparse lead instruments and mainly led by synth and keyboard where they are. There's virtually no guitars to be found here. And I almost hesitate to say it, but this is almost a song you could dance to. I mean, that may sound worrying to Anathema fans, but I wouldn't say it. I mean, hearing about it sounds like an Anathema dance track, oh god, what are they doing? But no, they kind of pull it off. I mean, yes, it's a bit jarring for the rest of the album, but it's actually pretty damn good. And that's particularly because of Vincent. Again, his vocal performance, wow. Another one of his strongest, as his ethereal vocals just echo over the programmed drums and beats. And then we get this sort of middle section, as the beats get louder and louder, they stop, and then pick back up again with this sort of throbbing bass that wouldn't feel out of place in like an Ibiza nightclub or a Moby track or something. Very strange indeed. I mean, we do then hear some real drums from John Douglas, which is cool. I mean, the thing about this track, I think, is one you certainly have to be in the mood for, and it definitely took me a few listens to truly start to appreciate it. But my main gripe is just how out of place it sounds. Well, You're Not Alone introduces the idea of electronica to the album. This song, I feel, just goes too all out for the album, and really is a sort of a juxtaposition for the album. It changes the pace, the feeling, everything just so dramatically. I mean, in Weather Systems, we had the storm before the calm, which would definitely change the pace a bit, written by John Douglas, again, like this song, which was written by John Douglas and Vince. But even though that song had more of an electronic element than the other songs, it still felt like it fitted in, and it still felt thematically right in the album. This, I'm not sure, does what, it's certainly a unique song and one that I thoroughly enjoy. Maybe it might have been better on the next album. That's my only gripe. And then Take Shelter, this really again screams Radiohead influence, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it still sounds Anathema, particularly with the orchestra and the crescendo at the end. Though before we hear the crescendo, we get this sort of panning from right to left of little bits of, I don't know, electronic sort of ambient notes. My terminology for electronic music is not extensive nor very good. And then towards the 3-minute mark, we really start to hit the crescendo with a swelling orchestra, but also this heavy, bassy beat going on and a lack of guitars. The finale is quite magnificent and refreshing, but again, I can't help but feel that it's a bit out of place. And that's the thing, what I really do love this album, it's certainly one that I'm going to be playing for a long time to come. I don't think it's as flawless or as perfect or as breathtaking as Weather Systems was in 2012, but I do believe Weather Systems to be one of the greatest artistic realizations in modern music of an album. This album just feels like it lacks direction a bit. I might have preferred the band to have focused either solely on their traditional crescendo-like rock songs, or focus on the electronic aspect and just made a full album of that. Instead, this album feels a bit transitional. Maybe they just weren't quite sure what to do after Weather Systems, how to follow it up, but these last 4 tracks, they feel so different to the first 6, and there is a little bit of a cohesion issue. But still, I'm not trying to criticise the album. This, to me, is more of a bit of a nitpick. This is still an album I think is fantastic and is worth checking out. Though if you're new to Anathema, I probably would recommend checking out Weather Systems first. This album could maybe put some people off with the second half and the electronic influence, particularly if you're not a big fan of electronic music. But for me, I still think this is just such a wonderful experience. Anathema take you on another excellent journey, and this to me is a 9 out of 10. It's a deeply rewarding, excellent experience, even if the 2 parts do feel a little not quite that connected. So this has been TheAIbumMan reviewing Anathema's Distant Satellites. Thanks for watching. Can't wait to subscribe, and as usual, long live rock and roll.